Who are you? What are you? Who the hell do you think you are? Do you know me? Do I know you? Get the hell across the face because hey, I am unbeatable. I am unsuable. So if you like my song, sing it for yourself. Hey, hey. Over me. I said, over me.
Hello. Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated. The Vice Chancellor of the Catholic University, Reverend Professor Stephen Mbogwangari, members of the faculty, my colleague, brother Tim Wanyonyi, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, students, comrades power, comrades power. Thank you very much. I am very delighted to have an opportunity to speak to this audience this afternoon. When a suggestion was made by Florence that I should come and talk here, I had some mixed feelings. The last time I was here, I was attending a presidential debate. And I don't think that I was very fairly treated. But I said I would come again. And I've come again and again to this place. So I'm very happy to see this audience this afternoon. Talk about a vision for the next 60 years and beyond about Kenya. Now, I begin by saying that in a few days' time, we'll be celebrating 60th birthday of Kenya as a nation. 60 years ago, our people proclaimed our country's independence. With that, we affirmed that our natural right as a people to be masters of our own fate and destiny. But how did we end up as Kenya? It is important that we go back into history. Kenya, the name Kenya was coined much later by missionaries. And there's many versions of it saying a missionary, I think it was called Mr. Redman, was talking to Mkamba around Mount Kenya, and he said, they were talking about Kinyaga. And the person said Kenya, he was talking about Kenya. But then this geographical space called Kenya was drawn in over 100 years ago in Berlin, at the Berlin Conference, where the imperial powers met. And at that time, there was scramble for Africa. So they decided to partition Africa, 1884-85. So Africa was then parceled out to various colonial interests, imperial powers. Portuguese, Spaniards, the British, the French, the Italians, and the Belgians. Spain got a small portion of it. So this is how these maps were drawn. And these maps were drawn artificially in Berlin without any regard to the people who were living in Africa. So Africa was artificially divided among the imperial powers. That's why you see that borders among many African countries are straight lines. If you see a border with Somalia, it is a straight line. One line inside and one straight line and another line outside. About then Tanganyika was a straight line from Lake Victoria all the way to the Indian Ocean. It was only in 1860 something, because Tanganyika was given to Germany, to the German territory. And on the German Emperor's 50th birthday, it was called Otto von Bismarck, Queen Victoria, who was the head of the British Empire, in a gesture said that on your 50th anniversary, I give you the highest peak in Africa, Kilimanjaro. And that is how, you see, Kilimanjaro was originally in Kenya. But then you see the map between Kenya and Tanganyika, now Tanzania, a straight line from Lake Victoria to Kilimanjaro, then it comes into Kenya, takes Kilimanjaro to Tanganyika, then again a straight line to the Indian Ocean. That is how it was done, it's arbitrarily. Then, but formal colonization actually of Kenya took place in 1904. But when the British first came here, they started building a railway line. By building a railway line, and they built a railway line from Mombasa. It was called Kenya-Uganda Railway. It was built from Mombasa up to Kisumu. You ask yourself, if it was Kenya-Uganda Railway, how did it end up in Kisumu? The reason is, at that time, Kisumu was part of Uganda. Uganda's boundary came all the way up to Naivasha. From Naivasha up to Lake Turkana, the west of that was Uganda. That's why it was called Kenya-Uganda Railway. When it reached Kisumu, it had reached Uganda. From there, they were now taken by ship across the lake to Port Bell in Uganda. Then, but then this Kenya was called actually just a territory. It was actually run by a company called British East Africa Corporation. They were just using it for hunting, coming to search for gold and ivory. But then came one colonial master, one imperialist by the name of his other name, but later on he became known as Lord Delamere. He came through Somalia on a horseback. And when he came on a horseback, he arrived on Mount Kenya. And then he saw a very beautiful land around Mount Kenya. He came down through Laikipia into what is the present day Nyahururu, what they called Thompson Falls at that time, into the Rift Valley, through Nakuru, Njoro, Eldoret, or Singishu, up to Mount Elgon. So he saw a very beautiful land. So when he came back to Nairobi, he went and met the governor. He told the governor that, look, you have a beautiful land here, which is ripe for large-scale agriculture. You have built a railway line from Mombasa all the way to the west. But the railway line will have nothing else to transport. It will be transporting goods from Mombasa to interior, but on the way back it will be going back empty. To make this railway line productive, you need to introduce large-scale agriculture. So this is now Lord Delamere. And I'm ready to go back home and campaign and bring white settlers to come and settle here and do large-scale agriculture on condition that you agree that each person I bring here will get 10,000 acres free plus black laborers. The governor agreed. And after that, now they signed an agreement with Lord Delamere. Lord Delamere was going to bring settlers here. Each settler who came will get 10,000 acres free, plus black laborers. But then Delamere then went back to England. He addressed town hall meetings in London, in Birmingham, in Manchester, in Liverpool, telling them that down there you have found land which is flowing with milk and honey, the biblical Canaan. And whoever agrees to come there will get 10,000 acres free, plus free black laborers. At that time, the story about Africa was very, very disturbing and worrying in England. Nobody wanted to come here. Most people did not want to come. So he got very little response. In frustration, he came back to Kenya. When he came back, having their own land, because a number of them were laborers on their own fellow white farms, was very appealing. So they came, and that's how most of white settlers who were here during that period came, a majority Boers from South Africa and Rhodesia. So they came here, they got land and got laborers. And so that's how Kenya was then occupied. So we ended up with what was called white highlands in this country. And people were moved, population were moved to create space for these people to settle. From Laikipia, from the slopes of Mount Kenya, the Maasai communities were living there. The whole of that Laikipia plain were moved. Around Naivasha, there was a corridor, 10-mile corridor, opened for Maasais to pass without chasing Ngombes, to go down to Narok and Kajiado, as they call it. Some Maasais were moved from Eldoret area. That area is called Uasin Gishu County today. But the Uasin Gishu Maasai are now in Trans Nzoia, that's where they live. They were moved from there to create space for Wazungus to settle in those areas. In Kericho and Bomet there, the large chunk of land was taken away from the Kipsigis and turned into tea estates. The same thing happened in Nandi. The same thing happened in Central Province area here and around Mount Kenya area. People were moved away from their lands and to create space for large-scale farming. So that's how Kenya was now settled by the white men. And then the white men, of course, they set up administrative structures in the country and ran this country for 60 years. So Kenya is now 60 years independent. It was also 60 years under proper colonial rule. So today now you are almost at 50-50 now. To look at what happened, what did the colonialists do in that 60 years, and what have we done ourselves the 60 years. Over the years, the joy of we attained independence after a long struggle, because Kenyans were being oppressed seriously. The land had been taken away. Africans were classified as not even second class. third class people. You had apartheid in this country. There was a white man, there was the Indian, there was the Arab, then there was the African, number 4, that time. And people rose up in resistance to this colonial rule. You will hear the story of Chief Koinange, who in 1912 had to go to the court to apply to be allowed to plant coffee in his farm, because no natives were not allowed to plant coffee, and he had to fight to be allowed to plant coffee. People were not allowed to settle in certain parts of their country. There was resistance in 1922. A man called Hari Dhuku led a demonstration in the center of Nairobi, near where the Central Police Station is today. And the colonial police opened up fire, and many people were killed. Some were arrested and detained. Hari Dhuku was taken to Kismayu, which was then part of Kenya, and he was detained there for several years. Then came later on the struggle for land, the Mau Mau struggle. But there was also struggle in other parts of the country, Western Kenya. But before that, the Nandi resistance, which you heard about, led by Samuel Koitalel. The Kamba resistance here, led by Mwindi Wambingu. The resistance by the people of Western Kenya, Ojijo Teko, Agula Awala, Elijah Masini.